When I stand before you, God, I will ask about the children. When I die and my feet find the trembling ground of whatever comes next, there will be a single question on my lips that will not let me rest. It will not be a question about heaven or hell, about reward or punishment, about the books of law or the songs of angels. I will turn and ask, plainly, fiercely, what kind of God lets children die like this? Not a whispered theological puzzle. Not a sermon question to be answered with theology and consolation. A human question, raw, urgent, and impossible to soften with metaphors. The little hands that never learned to hold a pencil. The small bodies that never outgrew their clothes. The lullabies stopped forever. What kind of God looks at a child and allows the light to be snuffed out while the world argues about strategy, security, and maps? Look at the faces. Names that begin with Al and Abu. Names that sound like our neighbors' names. Names that could be sung at baptisms and birthdays and then, without warning, become epitaphs. We keep statistics like weather reports. Numbers rising on dashboards while mothers bury their sons and daughters in graves no one else will visit twice. We talk of ceasefires and corridors and calculations, as if human lives are variables in someone's spreadsheet. The children are not variables. They are the only futures anyone will ever have. And yet the question is not merely about the terrible mechanics of war, missiles, sieges, shortages. It is a question of moral imagination. How do we, who call ourselves decent, stand in the light of day and let this happen? How do the institutions we revere, courts, parliaments, alliances, craft statements filled with the cadences of sorrow while the rubble keeps falling? What is the shape of a God who can be invoked to justify silence or rationalize indifference? Some will say fate. Some will say human free will. Some will quote scripture, claiming mystery as refuge. But the children do not ask for doctrine. They ask for bread, for a place to sleep without fear, for a chance to become the awkward teenagers they were always destined to be. They ask for a future. We cannot answer their mouths with centuries of theological debate. There is a cruelty in how small the world has made them. They are shoved into headlines, into hashtags, beautiful when a poster is needed, invisible when the cameras leave. Their bodies become evidence in investigations we promise to start and then forget. Their names are read once, then drift away like the sound of a radio turned down. It is not only the weapons that kill them, it is the architecture of avoidance that let them die twice. Once by violence, again by erasure. You could stand before any altar in any tradition and ask the same question. You might expect thunder, a revelation. Instead, so often, we hear silence, diplomatic silence, bureaucratic silence, the quiet of people who have calculated that involvement costs more than conscience. That silence answers for more than a single deity. It answers for a world that has voted by action and inaction, that some lives are more disposable than others. When I ask God, or when I shout at the sky, I will demand to know why mercy is not distributed with the same urgency as weapons contracts and news cycles. I will demand to know why the cries of children fail to break open our coffers of compassion. Where is the outrage measured not in retweets, but in rescue? Where is the rescue measured not in press conferences, but in actual protection, safe shelters, medicine, clean water, a future? If prayer is power, then why are prayers so often translated into silence? If faith is love, why does love not move the hands of the righteous, the leaders, the bystanders? If God is love, then tell us plainly, why do the most helpless among us pay the price for the rest of our cowardice? This is not blasphemy. It is grief given voice. The tone is not always accusing. Sometimes it is a howl of bewilderment. Sometimes it is a small, exhausted tenderness that refuses to be reasoned away. When you love something, you demand answers. When a child is taken, the demand becomes the only honest response left. And yet the question contains its own demand for us. To ask God why is to ask ourselves the same question. What kind of people are we who allow this? What kind of neighbors, what kind of nations, what kind of faith communities? Before we point our fingers to the heavens, perhaps we should open our hands, to take in refugees, to press aid into trembling palms, to use our votes and our voices and our stubborn, small acts of solidarity. Tears are not the end. They must lead to action. Let the thought of a child cold in a ruined bed be the engine that pushes us from sorrow into intervention. Not the kind of intervention that reads like an op-ed, but the kind that ensures safe routes, unblocks supplies, defends hospitals, holds accountable those who treat human lives as expendable chess pieces. When I stand before God, I will keep asking until an answer is given that is not dressed up in excuses. And if God answers that these things are allowed because of a plan beyond our comprehension, then let that answer come with a decree, that from this day forward, nobody will hide behind mystery to excuse cruelty. Let it come with a commandment etched not on stone, but on the living. Asterisk, protect the children. Save the innocent. Repair the broken. Asterisk. Until then, we must not be complicit in the answer. We must not let grief calcify in a habit. We must ache and then act. We must write their names on our tongues and demand that the next generation of gods, the leaders, the institutions, the indifferent bystanders, do better. If we cannot find God to give us mercy, then we must become mercy for one another. Because the real question we owe the children is not only to ask the heavens why they were taken, but to promise, with every breath we have left, that their deaths will not be our silence.